lists. Let me share my screen. Okay, JavaScript class list. And so far we've looked at how to manipulate the DOM, looked at how to create elements in the DOM, looked at how to read elements from the DOM, and using get element by ID, query selector, and the rest of it. So today I want us to look at an important part of this that we've not looked at since, which is JavaScript class lists. Okay. Or JavaScript class lists. JavaScript class list. I just feel it's very important to look at it so I'll know how it works. Now, what is JavaScript class list? JavaScript class list is it's a property provided by JavaScript, and what it does for us is it gives us the ability to manipulate classes in our code. Somebody is not muted. Please try and mute so you don't. It helps us to manipulate classes in our code. For example, if you remember the example we did last week, we're using we're clicking on a button, changing most of this effect that you'll be seeing actually comes from CSS. Now, I said your ability to know how to use your JavaScript to manipulate CSS helps you a lot in creating very dynamic and catchy websites. So one property of that JavaScript provides that helps us do that very well is the class list property. So that's why I deemed it fit for us to look at it and so that we understand what it means. So I don't have any HTML here. Okay, I have one HTML here. Let me I just want to get an HTML that we can work from. Okay. All right, so this is my HTML element. Now, what JavaScript class list basically does for us is it gives us all the classes. If we have a class in that HTML document. Okay, first of all, let me grab this H1 element in my JavaScript. And how do I grab it? We've looked at it. I can use, let me call it const, call it main. Okay, I see documents. Can use query selector, can use get element by ID. If you remember going through this query selector, let me use this. And so what ID, we had an ID here called first header. Let me just change it to main. Okay. Okay, that's fine. So it's called main now. Now, if I want to grab that particular header, call it main. So I've grabbed it in JavaScript. So if I go ahead and console log this my main, console log it, I'll have, this is what I get. So if I inspect, I should get that. Okay, so this is my main. This is what I'm getting here. Now, what do we use class list for? There are several things we use it for. I told you it's a JavaScript property that is used to manipulate CSS classes. Please note it. A JavaScript property that a property that JavaScript provides, or a JavaScript property, a property in JavaScript used to manipulate. It's used to manipulate CSS classes. CSS classes. Let's say for some reason I want my something needs to happen to change my CSS classes. So classes helps us to do that. You might be wondering, you remember when we were creating elements from scratch here from our JavaScript. Remember, we got to a point where we had to add classes. I don't know if any of us still remember when we had to add classes to the elements we created. Now that one is used to add it to okay, like class name. See on line 568 and on line 569. I'm adding an ID. That is, I'm creating an ID. This element at this point does not have an ID. Here I'm creating it for the first time. Why here too? The same thing. I'm creating a class. But this time around, when doing it with JavaScript, we call it a class name. Now in this case, I already have a class. Let's say I've already created it. I already have it here. Either I create it directly here or I create it using my JavaScript. Now I want to manipulate it. I want to work with it. So that is where the class list comes in. Now if I go ahead and say, main dot, I want to console log main dot class list. Let's see what we'll get. Main dot class lists. Okay. Okay. So it gives me a DOM tree. And this DOM tree is telling me that I don't have any class inside there. But let's go ahead and put a class. We have an ID, but let me go ahead and insert a class. Insert a class here and call the class header. Okay. So if we do the same thing, see, it's giving us now the length is 1, the value, the result, the class list property gives you the list of the class lists that you have in a particular HTML element, whichever element you're calling, in the form of an array. So in this form now, it's telling me that I have one class called header. So that's why I see the array length is 0. If I add another class here, let's say add another class, say header, and I say body. Okay. I will now have 2 classes inside, header and body. So the length of this array becomes 2. I have header and body. So it does what? It returns an array of the classes that you have embedded in whichever HTML element you're querying. So that is what it does. Now, having said that this is what it does, this is how to know the classes in a HTML element. What if we want to now add classes? We want to add classes. Let's say, as we had here, after I had my ID and I didn't have a class here. I had one class here, and I want to add other classes to it. And I want to add other classes. Okay, let's see. So we don't have a class as at this point. Therefore, come down to this line and say main dot class list dot add and we'll enter the value of the classes we want to add. We added let me add page. Okay, let me add page. So if I bring this down here now, let's see, on line 701, and I have a class called page. Meanwhile, on this line 697, there is no class here. So this one is how you query the class, what you have. Why adding? How to add a class? Adding the CSS class using JavaScript. Okay, so this is how you add the CSS class using JavaScript. You can add more than one classes. After doing this, I can come down here and continue adding. I can add 2 classes at a time. Let's say I call this one page and body. Okay, so I can have 2 classes added at a time. Oh, sorry. This second. So I have these 2 classes, page and body, added at the same time, page and body. So the add method that the class list property provides, this is the add method that the class list property provides, helps you to add classes to your CSS elements. The add method helps you to add classes to your CSS. All right, let's continue. Okay, so I added the CSS file. while we're on break. I added a CSS file, so we have a CSS file here now. All right, so let's continue. Now, this is my CSS. I have not written any styling. I've not written any styling in this. Now, let's say I now add, let me have a main style. Let me add a style called main or okay, can do any of them. So we added two classes here, page and body. So let me show you what happens here. So say page dot page and see background color, say red. Okay. So immediately I've gotten red as my background color. Remember that this thing came from JavaScript code. If I remove this, the background color disappears. But immediately I add this class called page. I have another one called body. Let's deal with the page first. So just to show that you can add more than one classes. So when I add page, it now gets this page that I've added, it now looks for the CSS and collects whichever properties that are allotted to that particular page. You understand where we are going to? So you see, I've dynamically added a CSS property called page that is not in my HTML here. There is no page here. But the effect of this CSS code is applying using JavaScript. So I've dynamically added the CSS property, to my element through a class. The one we did when we were looking at it before, we saw how we can add CSS properties using JavaScript dynamically from here. But in that case, we had to be adding it one after the other. For example, let's say I wanted to do it here. All I needed to do was I will say main dot style main dot style, and now when say background color. Sorry, main dot style the background color. Background color. Background color. I will say equal to red. See, if I use my CSS, I can do it this way. But imagine I have so many properties I want to add. I have to now still go down and do another thing. Maybe come here, I say, what color? I want to change the color. And I call this color white. Okay. We've done this before, just a refresher. Then let's say I want to give it a border. I have to do the same thing. I come down here and I say dot border, border. Okay. So I now have to come here. I say 1 pixel blue and solid. Or let me not use solid. Let me use dotted. There's a border that is dotted. Okay. Okay, so we see, if you look very well, you see this dotted, my dotted color. So let me increase the thickness to, let's say, 10. Okay. All right. So you see my dotted border around it. Now, imagine how tedious it would look like adding it one after the other like this, one after the other like this. That is where your class list comes into play. All I need to do using my class list, if I copy all of this here, copy all of this, go to my class, I create a class, my CSS, I create a class, I have a class called my background color red, my color is white, and I give it a nice border. Let me not use this. I give it a nice border. I'll say 2 pixel, 2 pixel width. Nice gray color. Let's change this one. So the color is white. Hope you cannot hear me. Please confirm you can still hear me.
Yeah, with you, we can hear you, sir.
All right. So you see, with my JavaScript, it's easier. I have added it instead of adding them one after the other. With my JavaScript, I just added everything at once and everything worked fine. Why is color is not? You can tell me what is happening here. My color isn't responding. Is it getting that? Getting the right color. That's yeah. Okay. All right. So I have this thing here, which I manipulated using JavaScript. So you see the importance of the class list property that JavaScript provides for you. Instead of adding these properties one after the other, you can go ahead and add them dynamically, especially if you need to add them dynamically. And as we proceed, we understand cases where you don't need to come here. You may not necessarily need to come here and specify the class, but there might be cases where you need to add them using your JavaScript. Okay, let's go to another one. How to remove classes. How to remove classes. As the name implies, removing classes, we do the same thing, but this time around, we use the method, the remove method. All we need to do is to come here. If I come here and I say remove, it will just remove the class I initially added before, and these properties won't apply anymore. We'll go back to our default property. This is removing a class. So removing a class. You might be wondering, okay, why do we use this thing? Why do we use this thing? For example, let's say I have something, I want to display an element such that I want to tell users, once you click on this button, I want this to happen. Specify a set of properties and you say, okay, when I click on this button, I want this property to apply. And when I click on this button, I want this property to be removed. A typical example is what the example last time, but that one we did it with another important method that the class list property provides for us, which is the toggle method. So I want us to look at the toggle method. We have seen the add method, and we want to look at the toggle method. The toggle method. Toggle is CSS class. Toggle is CSS class. Okay. Now, what the toggle method simply does is that it toggles a particular class. If the class exists, it will remove it. If it doesn't exist, it will add it. If it exists, it will remove it. If it doesn't exist, it will add it. For example, this class that was specified here, if the element, let's say, in this case, we've removed it here, so the class is not here anymore. If I come to toggle and I toggle that same class, let's say main.toggle, main.classlist, sorry, .toggle. Okay. And what's the class name you want to toggle? The same class page. Now it is there. If I refresh this page, because my JavaScript is running like this, so this is the last thing that ran. What happened here is that on line 703, it was not here, it was removed. So the toggle will bring it back. But let's say, let me comment out line 703, which means it was there from the beginning. The toggle will remove it. And so when the code runs to this line, it is removed. Why? Because in the last case, it was added. So it will check the last case. If this class was already there, toggle means remove it. If it's not there, you add it. Now, to what we discussed last week, relating to what we discussed last week, a very good example where we use this is when we are doing something that probably you're telling the users, when click on this button, I want this to happen, click on this button, and I want this to happen. Let's do it with our example up above here. So I have a query selector main, I selected main, and let's say I selected main. So let me add an event listener to this main that was selected. So we'll see how this toggle method works. Can go ahead and delete this. So let me add an event listener to main. Let's say main.add event listener. And remember, I told you that click is not the only event listener we have, but it's the most popular we use almost on a daily basis. So that's why you see me using it repeatedly. So I want to use an arrow function to represent it. And so what I simply want is that I want something to happen such that each time I click on this, it will toggle between, it will toggle the class. So I still repeat my main. I say main, because since I'm working on the main dot class list dot toggle, okay, toggle page. This is one of the use cases, the best way, the use cases of this toggle. So now it is already there. So see what happens as I click my page, it will remove and add, because I'm saying that I'm calling an event listener called click. And I said, if I click on main, if it had a class before, remove it. If it's not there, add it. See, moving it and adding it, moving it and adding it. So this toggle is one important class list method that is often used to perform this magic, where you click on something, you want a class. So what it's simply doing is that if I click, JavaScript will run the code and check, is this class list, is this class existing anywhere? Was it added anywhere? If it's added, it will remove it. And if it is not added, it will add it. That is how we got that effect. So this is how we got the effect we got in the example we did last week, when we were clicking on our button and hiding and unhiding, that is hiding and unhiding our password, input field that we had last week. All we're doing, we're just changing the input field type from password to text, password to text, password to text. That was what we were doing last week. So please, do we understand these three methods before I go ahead and discuss the other methods? Hello?
Yeah, with you, sir.
Okay. All right, so we can go on. Please, if you have a question, do well to ask. All right, so let me go ahead. Now, another thing, there are other methods that are also that we also use with our class list, JavaScript class list properties. But those ones are methods that are rarely used. These three that we discussed today are the ones that we use, you see often in most designs, are the ones that you see often in most of your designs. But there is another one called replace. As the name implies, what it simply does is it replaces a CSS class with another CSS class. It replaces a CSS class with another CSS class. So let me go ahead and show you how that one works. So I have replaced the CSS class. And this place, we just change this to replace. But replace now takes two parameters. The first one, yes, the first value is what you are replacing, and what the second value is what you're replacing it with. Yes, I want to replace this with page and head. Yes, I have a class called head. So once this happens, it has been replaced head. So you see, and I don't have any CSS property called head. It has been replaced with head. So if I go ahead and construct one, maybe I style a head property here. So I style a head property here. Call this head. call this head. Then let's say in this case, I say background color. I choose another color, pink something. Okay. So this is the new. I change this. Okay. So in this time around, I call this one pink. So it's, as you can see, it has been replaced with that head. But if I comment it out, to go back to the property it had before. If I remove it, it will be replaced. Now, as you know that now this replace cannot also all toggle can be used in its place in terms of you to change the properties, toggle between two, remove one property and add one property. But this other one, what it does is it replaces a CSS class with another entirely to another CSS class. So that is as simple as it gets. Used to replace a CSS class. It's a method that's provided by the add list property of JavaScript that helps you replace a CSS class. Another one is contain. There's another one called contain. Contain simply does what the name implies. It will check and see if a particular CSS class is contained in the HTML element you're querying. It's called contain. Contains. So here, what it will do is it's checking if it contains this. Now, what it returns is a true or if it returns a true or a false value. If it contains it, it will return a true. If it contains it, it doesn't, it will return a false. Let's say for some reason I wanted to check if it contains a particular class. I can say if, and now take the whole of this here. I say if this happens, sorry. If this is true, so if this is true, what do I want to do? I want to do in inner text, but we did this inner text, call it what I'm simply checking for is if it contains this, then change this text to a new beginning. So let's see if we remove one. Okay, so let's see. See, when the code runs to this point, it's checking if it contains a page. If there's a CSS class called page and it's contained in this element, once it contains, I say to change the text to a new beginning. So it has changed the format text that we had to a new beginning. So that is as simple as it gets. It returns it true, but if it doesn't contain it, it won't change it. Like here, because we replaced it with head. No, here we replaced it with head. So it will check for that property, and if it doesn't, because it check for that property, because we replaced it, it's no longer there. So nothing will happen. It will remain the way it is. So that is what CSS class list property helps us to do in JavaScript. But I don't know if we have questions concerning this. And I've also last week I showed you how this method can be applied when we did our password and stuff that we did. So I don't know if there are questions. If you have questions, please ask before we move to something else. I think this will end with this will be concluding DOM. Now, this is not to say that we've covered everything in DOM and events. This is just a guide. Then as you practice along, if there are situations that are peculiar that you encounter, you can always share. But this provides you with the basic ideas. So that when working with other click events or other DOM elements and stuff, you use the same approach to work with them. So are there any questions before we move to the next item I want us to look at? Any question? Hello, I need your response, please.
No question from my end, sir.
Okay. All right. So I want us to look at something today, something unique. I want to see how we can, how you remember you see those cards. I don't know if I have any. See those nice cards that are always on display on most websites. Let me see. I want to show you an example of what I mean by these cards. Now you see these cards. I wanted to show us how we can create cards. Okay? Just a sec, let me. Okay, so I want us to look at how we can create. These are not cards, but this what I was trying to say. For instance, this now, see this whole part of this. This part looks similar to this. The only thing that is changing in this part are the write-ups, but the other things are similar. So these are like small cards that are created, small cards that are created. So we'll look at how we can actually dynamically do these things such that we can create cards. And one of the ways through which we get that done is using our maps. We did the map method. The map method is a very, very, very useful method when it comes to JavaScript manipulation. Even when you start learning React, you still use map. So I want us to map and produce and design these beautiful looking cards that are similar, that are the same. The only thing that is changing in these cards are the content of the cards. So that's what I want us to look into, because I promised you that we'll try and make our class more practical. As we learn, we practice, we practice, because you learn more when you practice certain things. We practice so that these things can be using them in real life to do other things for ourselves. So I will start from here. First of all, I will have, let's create it together. Let's say we want to get an array. We want to get an array of, okay, let's do students' age and name. Is that fine? Let's do students' age and name. Okay, students' age and name. Okay, yeah, let's do students' age and name. Students' age. Okay, so I have, this is an object. Hope we all remember this is an object. Okay, okay, let me store it in an array. Or anyone will work, but let me use an array. I have an array, this array. I know some of us are teachers here, so you understand what I'm trying to do. So in this array, I now have the name of a student called, okay, Jane. Okay, and her age, Jane is let me say 5. So we are dealing with kids, something. Okay, something is not going well. What am I not getting right? Please help me. Oh, sorry. All right. So I have, this is an array, and inside an array, and I have an object. I have an array and I now have an object. So let me just delete all these things. I don't need them anymore. Okay, so I have an array that has an object embedded in it. Let me go ahead and delete all these. Don't need them anymore. All right, so I have this array here. And in this my array, wait, this will be working down. So in this my array of students' age and name, I have my first student called Jane. Maybe for some reason I'm asked to type this and I'm typing it manually. I have first student called Jane. I have another one called Mark. Then Mark is let's say Mark is 12, and I have just do I have here 1, 2, 3? Okay, let's keep it 4 for now. Okay, so I have this, so I have Mark, I have this. Let me change this to Spencer. Spencer is 14. Juliet. Okay, so I have these names. I want to create a small card that will contain their name and their age, their name and their age. Since this is an array, the first thing that should come to your mind, the card I want to contain will look like this. Maybe small cards like this, but I won't arrange them on top of each other. The arrangement is CSS, you can always see. So let's say here, I want to get a student name here and the age of the student here. Okay, we'll also add a button. We'll do something like this, but we're not adding an image. So this will be our student name, this will be the age, and this will be a small button, say maybe check out these students. So how do we do this dynamically using JavaScript? How do we do this dynamically using JavaScript? This is where we okay, how do we go about it? So we have to think of a method, an array method that we can use that we can loop over. When we loop over that array method, we now get values. We now collect these individual values. For example, if I loop over this method using map, let's say I use map dot, sorry, I see map. This is what I want to map, dot map. This is my map method. Okay, I know map method. Remember, I told the map method takes in, if you even look at it here, it will tell you it takes the callback function. But so you don't, this is it. And it just takes in a function. Just know it like this. Now, what does this map do? Remember when we did map? Since I'm mapping this array, this is an array, I'm mapping this array. Please follow me. I'm mapping this array. So what do I need to do? I need to pass in a variable here. Let's say item. What I'm simply saying is that on each of these items, so if you take each of these items and console log it for me, console.log, console.log item. So what is this thing doing? It is taking this, my array, going through the array. It will first go through the first item. This thing represents each of the items in the array. See, if I hold my cursor here, I will see name and age, name and age. It represents, it's like a generic, it's like a general copy of the content of my array. It's not a particular content of the array, it's a general template. It's like a template because this is how all my array looks like. I have name and age, name and age. So it will take each of these templates and do something with it and now spew it, give me a result. Now, if I go ahead and check, you will see I console logged it. So the individual elements are what I'm having here. Let me comment out this guy. Yes, give me this. I don't need to name of this class. So see what the map method simply does? It will bring out each of these objects. Remember that these are objects: name, age, name, age, name, age, name, age, name, age. Each of them, it will bring it out for me. But let's say for some reason I only want the name. I'll just put dot name. Please, who can tell me why I'm putting dot name? Hello? Who can tell me why I'm using dot name?
I think because you have two items there. So to be specific, to specify the one you want to come out.
Okay, you are partially correct, but you're not using the right terminology. Who can help us out?
I think you will need the value of that name. That is why you use the name.
But there's something I'm looking for. See, I said, see, if I remove the name, the result it gives us is what? What are these? What do we call JavaScript variable in this format?
Okay, it gives you properties and the values.
Okay, when you have a property and a value, you have an object. You understand? So these are objects. And this is the property, and this is the value. The property and value. Now, remember when we did object, we said in order to read the value of an object, you use the dot notation. So this right here, this item now is my object, having name and age. But I want to read only name. Because it's an object, I have to use the object. This is the object item dot name. If I do item dot age, it will give me all the age there. Dot age, it will give me all the age. So the reason why I'm using dot is because the result it is giving me is an object, and I need to read the values of this object. So I need to use the dot notation. Remember, we said you can either use the dot or you can use the bracket notation. If I go ahead and use bracket, it will still give me the same result. Bracket age is not defined. It's just leave this bracket guy. I don't know why it's turning undefined. But basically, this is what you get. You can use the bracket notation and use the dot notation to read from an object. Please, is this object part clear? Because I know we did it before. I just wanted to refresh our minds. We've done two things here. We map through a set of arrays. Now, this is a big array that now has small objects inside of it. So what JavaScript, what map does it enters this array. This is where the array starts. This symbol here shows you there is an array. It enters into this container and displays, well, let me call it the children of that container. And coincidentally, the children of this container are all objects. They are all objects. So it will just bring out all the objects for me. But if I want specific values in that object, I have to now go further and now say dots, whichever value, dot the property name of the value I want to get. Like this case now, I want to get the age with the value of their ages. So I need to do dot age. I want to get their name, I just have to do dot name. This is this part. If it's not clear, don't worry. If we discuss something and you don't understand it, don't feel that by ask question to know. If you don't understand it here, you let me know. You have the right not to understand it. Because trust me, everybody is really learning on this. So please, if you don't understand it, call my attention. Is it clear up to this point? Hello, everybody is quiet.
Yes, sir. I'm clear.
Okay. All right, that's good. So we can continue. All right, so what we've succeeded in doing is we've now gotten these things, the content of these objects. Now, my initial plan was to display it here in something like a box. That was what we had in mind doing, remember? So in order to make that work, we have two ways of doing it. It's either we totally create, we go ahead inside this place and we'll try to create our HTML here, or we ignore this and create it from here. So which ones we did, let's create it here so that we'll all be on the same page. So let's go ahead and create it now. So we are creating, where is my, index.html. So I have this here, I have this here. So in order for this to work very well, just pardon me, let me add a root div here. Let me add a root div. Add a root div. Let me add an div that will call the ID of this div the root. Okay. So let me copy this header inside here. Copy it here. So let's have this like this, and this I won't call it main anymore. I'll call it don't need to call it anything. Just do that. All right. So you know that after my header, I now have something beneath, maybe my main or something. Okay. So that main now I want to create it using div. Okay. So for the sake of styling, let me just include that guy I deleted from here. But I'll call it head. This is doing things properly. Plus, call it header instead of main. Okay. So let me go here and change this to header. Okay. So now have our header properly laid out. Okay. So I can uncomment this. I can comment this out. I just did this for what we're doing as this. So let me comment it. Okay. Okay. All right. So having said, explained this, how it is well understood. So let's go ahead and now add it. So the first thing we do is we now have to create the value itself, where we want to the variable the variable required to store the value we are creating. So I'm trying to create a main. You can call it any name, remember. So I will say document dot create elements dot create elements. So what do I create? I'm creating I can create a main, or I can create, let me call it a div, anyone. I'm creating a div. After creating this div, and I have I created a div. Okay, okay. I want to append these values to my div. All right. So the next thing is my map. This is my map. Go ahead and do this here. So instead of just console logging this guy, I will do
Hello, sir, please, you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, so let me go through it again. Okay, we have main that we created before, but before then, I created a div. I retrieved my root elements. So this my root, this document.createSelector root is actually from here. It's my root ID, my root element. You get to understand why I needed to grab it here. So now I've created my main, which is a div element, or let me just call it div to avoid any sort of. Let me just call it div. Okay, so let me call it div. I might need to create other divs. Okay, so this is my main div. I now have my main div. So we understand this process. I just created the div, then I appended it to the root elements. Of course, it will appear below because this is the head, and it will appear below this one. Okay. So now, what I'm attempting to do is, I want to do this dynamically in the sense that I want these values to be here instead of me going ahead and writing maybe Caro. This is Caro. Right, just something like that. So let me go ahead and do it dynamically so you see the results. So, all right, so after I loop through my arrays, after looping through my arrays, what do I want to do? Now I want to get my inner elements, my inner HTML. But this time around, I use these backticks. And you understand why I'm using backticks. And I'll say for each of these looping that I have done so far, please, what will happen is that an H1, a div element to be created. Let me write it out here. I want to create a div element. Okay, my div element will now have two P elements. The first P element and the second P element. Now the first P element will have the name, while the second P element will have the age. First P element will have the name, and the second will have the age. So I want to create these two P elements. So this is what I want to do here when I simply do. So I can just copy this here and put here. So JavaScript understands this very well. You're telling JavaScript, when you run this, what is it telling me? See, on the main is not defined. Okay, it's supposed to remain. When you run this, it will now form a main and attach this thing to it. So if for some reason, okay, let me see. Okay. So what it will now do is that it will now form this, and the inner HTML of this will be these values. But what I want to do, I want to take each of these items that was formed here to form this value. Now I said here I want the name to appear here, and here I want the age to appear here. So this is why I was using backticks. All I need to do is I'll come here and I will call, because I have item there. See this item, it was passed down to this using this function. I will call this item. So this backticks doesn't know how to arrange things in order. Let me see. Okay, so I like this arrangement. Let me now use this here, here, and here. Am I correct? Sorry. Okay. Okay. I have my item.name here. Over here, I have item.page. So whenever you see either a backtick or a double quote, it means that you want to pass, you're simply saying that you want to pass and this dollar sign. What you're simply saying is that you want to pass a JavaScript function. So what this will do for you is that it will evaluate if JavaScript, it will perform a JavaScript function and pass into HTML. As you can see on my screen, I'm having Caro and this one, the last two. But what I intended to do was to call all of them. After calling them, I now pass them into my main dots, my main dot div. But in order to do that, I have to use plus here. Let's see. I'm saying I want to get. Sorry for that. I'm trying to do this thing that we do. How you start with 0, then call a function to add to the one you already have. That's where I'm getting. Yeah. Okay, so this is what I wanted to achieve. Now see what happened here. I did a map method on my arrays. Now the map method allowed me to access the individual elements of this my array, which is this item through this item. So each of these items will now be passed into this main div that I created here. And all I'm saying is that, please, the first time this item runs, if you run the first time, create this div element that has P. Now the first P will take the name, which I can access through my item.name because I have access to my item and individual items. So let's say the first time it runs, it will run with this guy. Now it will now save it to this variable called main div. Remember that this plus here in JavaScript means this thing is the same thing as writing this equal to, same thing as me writing, same thing as writing, doing it this way, main div plus. This is the same thing. It's the same thing as writing this way. Let me see. How is that inner HTML? Inner. Okay, it's the same thing as writing it this way. But instead of repeating this name, it's like when you say, like when you want to say, you save a value, you say let's A equal to, so if you want to call back A again, you want to say B is equal to A plus B, like let's B equal to A plus say 1 or something. Sorry, that is not the best way to explain this. Say let's say A, say A, this is my A that I just called in. I say it's equal to A plus 1, which will give me 2. So instead of doing this, I can just go ahead and write A plus 1. I hope we are not getting confused because we did this when we started before we dived into JavaScript. So this is the same thing as writing A equal to A plus 1. So all I'm saying is that the first time A is 2, you save A as 2. The second time that you're coming back, A will be 2, then you add 1 to it. So instead of writing A plus 1, you just go ahead and say A plus equal to 1. So that is the same thing we did here. So the first time this function executes, because it's a map is like, it will keep it like a loop. It will run first. So when it goes the first time, it will pick this first variable. So what it does is, as it gets to this point, it will dissect or open up the item object, store the name where we called it item.name, store the age where we called it item.image for the first time, and save it to main div.inner.html. That is the first time. Now the second time is coming to run. Don't forget that it already has something stored the first time. So the second time it is running, this one is already stored. Once this one is stored, this one will be out of the way. This one will no longer be in the loop. What will be remaining in the loop will be 1, 2, 3, 4. It will run the second time, pick up mark H12, go the second time. But because the first item has already been stored, it will store that one, add it. So the new value for main div will be item 1 and item 2. We will now be left with the other 3, 4, 5. Do the same thing until it gets to the last element. When it gets to this carrow, that is 17, these other ones will have been stored there, then carrow will not add to it. So that is what this thing means, which I said in shorthand, we can just, instead of repeating that word, we can just go ahead and put plus before the equal to, and we'll get the same result. So this is what we get. We get the same result. So what I've successfully done here is I've rendered this my array dynamically. Instead of going ahead to code and write each of them one after the other, one after the other, one after the other, I can do this manually by saying main div.inner.html. I put the first one, main div.html, I put the second one, I keep adding like that, I keep adding. But with the map method, which can also be achieved using the loop. So if you can put those things you want to add in an array and use any array method to loop it and add it, see the short code we wrote here now produces this result. This short code now produces this result. The other way I would have been able to do it is to do it one by one. I have to go ahead and say main div.inner.html. I will now create another main div, let's say main div2, and now assign inner.html to it. Main div3, and now assign until when I now finish, I now append all of them as child elements to root. Is it clear? Please, I need your feedback. Let me know if this is well understood. Hello?
So to me, what you explain is clear, but I have
Okay.
another question.
Okay, well, let me hear your question.
The question is there, this backtick.
Okay.
I don't understand it, like the reason of putting it there.
Okay. Now, see what backtick does. Backtick does this for you. You know how we write when we were doing, okay, see, here now, I'm writing, let me comment this out. If we're not doing that thing the way we using the map method, this is how we would have still done it, which would have still worked. I will just go main div 1, let me call this main div 1, and I append main div 1 here. I've done the one for that one. I now have to come back again. Why is it not coming? This main div 1. Oh, sorry, main div. This should remain div 1. Main div 1. Okay. So you can imagine I wrote this 3 line of code just to add only carrow. If I want to add carrow's age, I have to do the same thing. I have to go ahead and do this. This whole 3 thing I wrote here, I'll come down here, create again, maybe call this one main div 2. Main div 2 and main div 2. Then I now add carrow's age, which is 17. So we've gotten carrow's name and age. Okay. Remember that this is just for this one. So I have to repeat the same thing for all of them. So imagine how many lines of code I'll be having. Now instead of going ahead to do this one after the other, sorry, I started from carrow, which is the last one. I should have started from this. I can start from this, just change the name to Jane and stuff. So let's say I've done all of them. Okay, let's do it. So the whole of this. So I have 1. So let me do this one 0. Let me do this. I'm trying to do 0. Let's call it 0. We'll call this call this 1. Sorry, I have to do this again. Let me just, I want you to see how tedious it is not knowing how to use map and other array function, array methods. Initially, we did everything like this manually. Okay, but see, it gets better. Sheet 3. Okay, all right. Now I have all these things. The first one, this one, the name should be Jane, and Jane is 5 years old. Change it to Jane. And this one, change it to 5. Okay. How many lines of code am I writing here? I wrote this whole code just to display 2 of these, just these 2 things, the 2 of them. Although I used the last one, which is Carol, we can change the name to Mark and stuff. This whole code just for that. That is why instead of doing this, we decided that no, this is not the best way. We decided to use our map. The only thing the map requests for us is you have to now form an array that has the values you want to display. You form an array that have these values you want to display. Then use your map method to now reproduce them. Okay, I deleted this here. Down here. Add main div here. In this. Okay. In this. Don't need this here anymore. Yeah. Yeah, Suka, go ahead and ask a question. Hello, Suka. Go ahead and ask a question.
Oh, sorry, that's a mistake.
All right, all right. Okay. Now, to answer the question, the previous question that was asked. Now, in this case, see what we are doing here. Each time we want to assign a HTML element to a JavaScript block. This is a JavaScript file. Want to assign HTML, we put it in this. We assign it as if we are assigning a value to a variable using quotes. Now, in this case, what we are doing here is that we are not just assigning, we are doing some computation here. Each time you need to do a JavaScript computation inside a HTML, you enclose it with a backtick, or I think even a code should work also. Let's see. No. Let's see. Okay, so the backtick, we talked about the backtick some time ago. You know, we said whenever you want to assign a variable to a HTML in JavaScript, if you assign a variable, if you want to assign a variable called car, if it's a string, you use double quotes or car. So a string, you use double quotes and say, okay, I have a car up, so let's say BMW. Okay. Now, these are, I have another one too. Can use double quotes. Can use double quotes. You can also use the backtick we use there. But the backtick is a special form that JavaScript provides for you to assign a variable. Now, apart from the fact that you can use it like this normally in your code to assign variable, JavaScript understands that I need to assign a backtick, a string. Now, another thing the backtick does is that it helps JavaScript to do to compute it enables JavaScript to compute calculations inside of HTML. Because this thing I'm doing here, this code here is not a HTML code. This item.name is a code that is used to retrieve the name property of an object in JavaScript. but I want to write it inside an HTML element. So what the backtick does is provide that interface in order to write it inside. Because I'm providing a $sign, this $sign tells this my code that I am actually trying to access a JavaScript function or a JavaScript method inside an HTML element. I know you can also do this using, if you don't want to use backticks, I know you can do it. Let me see. We can go ahead and do it this way. I'm trying to remember. Just a sec. I'll go ahead and put our quotes here. Also put it here. Okay. I think then it gets to this point. Something like this. Remember how this works. I know there's another way you can represent this if you don't want to use backticks. So I'm trying to correct. Remind me. I have so many things I've told you to remind me about. Just remind me. I think there's another way you could do this if you don't want to use backticks. Okay. I think this way. Yeah, don't. Let's stick with backticks for now. But I think there's another way you could do this without backticks. I know there's another approach, but I can't wrap my head around that now. But backtick is just like your normal double quotes and single quotes. The only advantage backtick adds to you, it enables you to do JavaScript computation inside of HTML. It enables you to perform JavaScript computations inside of HTML, because this computation here, I remember that whenever you have a HTML document, you now have a $sign. The $sign means that it is entering this part. See the way the browser reads this thing. The browser knows that this thing belongs to HTML. Once it sees div like this, arranged like this, because the backtick is more or less like, do we use our quotes? So you're saying that div.inner HTML. So it's expressing a HTML element here. So what it now does, when it gets here, it knows that it's supposed to have a HTML element. But when the browser now gets to this point, when it encounters the $sign, the browser now knows that there is a computation I need to do that is not coming from HTML, but rather coming from JavaScript. So it will enter, do the computation, collect the value of that computation, and put it where it's supposed to be. So this is how we get it. So if you go ahead and inspect your page, let's inspect this page and see. At least I'm trying to answer your question. So let me show you something. Let me show you something here. Okay, see what happened. This is okay. Now this is what the browser sees. This whole thing has been converted into a big div that contains all of this inside. All of this inside. This whole thing has been so the browser quickly sees that the browser quickly identifies that you want to write HTML by that quote it's saying. But if you don't put that quote, everything is supposed to be HTML inside there. Now, once you put that $sign, the $sign it's seeing there, the browser will quickly understand that yes, there is a computation I need to do that is coming from JavaScript. It will quickly do the computation, retrieve the value of the computation, and replace it here. That is why when you go here to inspect, you're not seeing item. You're just seeing plain HTML. Yeah. So I don't know, Felix. I hope I've been able to understand to explain why we use backticks. Back is called backtick. Backtick. If you check your keyboard, just underneath your escape button, it's called backtick. We've done this before. We explained it. I think maybe you were not backtick. We use it the same way we use our single and our double quotes, but it has an extra functionality that it brings to the table. It helps us to compute JavaScript inside our HTML. Is that understood, Felix?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can see now we're able to get this. All we need to do is to use CSS to style it and put them inside cards. Put them inside cards using our CSS. So please, any question, I will leave the card part for you. There's a CSS document here. So all you need to do when you're doing it, please go ahead and implement the CSS. And just want to have a card. Like these are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to have 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 cards with name and age, name and age, name and age, just like that. But the aim of today's class is to show you how you could dynamically render the content of an HTML with the help of our loop methods. When I say loop methods, I mean methods like map method. You can use the for loop. You can use for each, and so many of them. But I like using map. I like using map. You can use any of them, and it will still work. So this is simply how you need to do it. But remember that before you do that, you have to have an array. All your variables need to be stored inside an array. And after storing them in an array, you come up with a method that you can use in looping them and getting your objects rendered dynamically. See, the only thing we did there was just to display this guy, just to say item.name, and it went ahead to bring everything. We didn't start coding. If we are to write this thing using this pattern, I'm telling you, we'll fool the whole of this place. We just did 2 and see we have almost almost 12 lines of code. So if we were to do the 5, we have 60 lines of code. But that has been shortened with these lines of code. So that is what those loop method helps us to achieve. We'll be ending in less than 10 minutes. So now I would like to take questions and observations and anything you want us to look into. And I hope we're able to grab something in today's class. Paul, it's been quite a while. How are you doing? You still on this call? I saw him briefly. Paul, you're
Yes,
talking.
Paul. He's still there.
Okay, but Paul, we can't hear you. He's trying to say something, but we can't hear you. Take your mic. All right.
You can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry that I've been absent, though not really absent, but it's just that I've been having a little issues down here in Kaduna. Like I had little power issue, and I think that has been solved now. So that's why I'm trying to follow you gradually. And I saw the other videos too. I'll still follow it and understand it the way I should. I sent the message to you, but I didn't get the reply, sir.
Okay, when was that?
That was last year. I think that it was last year, December. Because in the month of December, because all of a sudden I'll check the class and I'll see everywhere will be quiet because I put it in my calendar in my phone here, my Google Calendar. So anytime the class is anytime that is Saturday or any day that is Saturday by 3 o'clock, it will alert me. So whenever I come in the class, I'll see the class very quiet. And I send a message through Slack to you.
Okay.
I send a message to you through the Slack channel. And
I think I replied, but maybe my reply came in very late. But notwithstanding, we are trying to work out a system that will be more effective this year, which I hope will be very soon.